Performance marketers who optimize for leads. History shows your lead costs are to be going up in the month of November. In this episode of the Paid Traffic Forecast, we'll go through exactly what the forecast shows, the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to, what the projection models say your P&L could look like depending on what you focus on, and the 3 actions you can take to maximize your results despite rising costs. More on that right after this. Hey there, and welcome to the November 2025 Paid Traffic Forecast for lead advertisers. My name's John Belcher. I'm the founder here at Decyphered. That's Ross Pietersen, the head of media buying. And we're excited to show you what's around the corner for your campaigns in the month of November. So before we dig in, I want to explain what we do here at Decyphered really quickly. We help all of our clients understand and win at the scaling game. Help them focus on the things that matter to unlock their next level of scale with paid traffic. And one of the keys to the long-term success with this game is understanding your cost environment. It has a huge impact on your results, and that's why we made this forecast. So inside this forecast, we're going to give you 4 things. The first is the November outlook. We're going to talk about what the last 5 years tells us is likely in store for you as a lead advertiser. We're going to go through the hot spots and the cold spots. Ross is going to tell you the specific dates your media buyers need to pay attention to and the do's and the don'ts in each scenario. I'm going to go through the projection models and tell you what your numbers could look like depending on what you focus on. And then finally, I'm going to go through the cost environment playbook. I'm going to give you 3 actions you can take to maximize your results and or prepare for the future. So when we talk about the November outlook, I want to explain how this forecast was created. This was created out of necessity. My job is to go through and help our clients basically project the P&L to understand what's likely to happen in the upcoming month. To do this, I went and looked at 5-year historicals on Meta, analyzing hundreds of millions of dollars of spend, looking at the CPM trends for the 4 major conversion types. I developed a projection model and tested it and found we could project within about 5% of actual results for clients spending $1 million a month or more in ad spend. What's important for you to understand is while we use Facebook as the data set, we found these percentages apply across platforms. It's very similar behavior. Meta, Google, native, and it's starting to apply to AppLovin more as more advertisers are coming on. What's important for you to understand, this is a forecast and not a prophecy. So while this has trended to be very accurate, things change based off of the year. So our goal is to give you a good understanding of what's coming up and then pay attention in real time to what actually is happening because things can adjust. People call me Johnny Raincloud because I'm always looking at the pessimistic side of things. I plan for the worst and I hope for the best. So what I did when I built this forecast is I looked at 3 different scenarios, the worst case, the median case, and the best case. I have focused on everything inside of this forecast on the worst case scenario because if you prepare for the worst, you can only be surprised by overperforming on the numbers, which is a good thing. So worst case scenario, in the change between October and November, you're going to see a 19% increase in cost per lead. This actually boils down to the CPM, which I'll explain later. I know you don't care about CPM, you care about cost per lead. This is the number that you need to pay attention to. But this 19% change isn't useful for media buying. This is a macro level change that's valuable for P&L planning for the management team. The media buying team needs to look at something different on the micro level. And that's why Ross went through and created this forecast that helps you see what's actually going to take place throughout the month so you and your team can react in accordance. So between the beginning of the month and the end of the month, we're expecting your cost per leads to go up 38.3% between that time period. And there's specific things throughout the course of the month that Ross is going to walk through when we talk about hot spots and cold spots. So Ross, let's head over there and you take it away.
Perfect. So let's go and have a look just quickly what a hotspot and cold spot is. And these are just short-term cost swings. A hotspot is a rapid cost change in increasing costs, and a cold spot is a rapid cost change in decreasing costs. So let's look at which dates we've ironed out for what kind of hotspots and cold spots there are. We've got 4 significant dates: the 31st of October, 9th of November, 24th of November, and the 30th of November. And when we go into our heat map, John, this is a crazy colored heat map. Going into Q4, obviously we know this is a really volatile period. A lot of colors across the board here, so there's a lot of volatility. Let's take a quick look. 31st is our first cold spot. Massive downward slope cost change from the end of October into November. We're seeing quite a bit of cold through the first third of the month. And then we go into our first hotspot from the 9th things are pretty stable through the middle, and then we go into the crazy period that every advertiser, if you're in the retail space, looks forward to. That's the 24th of November, and then we see the downward run from there on the 30th of November. This is a pretty crazy heat map. As you can see, there's a lot of change through this. And if you're in a media buying seat, this is a pretty tough one to look at. But these are the changes that are going to be happening through this month. I think it's important that let's go and have a look at what these changes will feel like as you go through them. So let's look at a cold spot first. And essentially what that feels like is as you go through the cold spot, there's this big overspend because we've got a change in cost environment. And we'll speak about two different kinds of advertisers in cost controlled and uncontrolled environments. With both, this creates massive instability because you're changing cost and you've got this massive overspend. Let's go and look at some do's and don'ts here, John. Well, first, let's see what a real world example looks like. And in our agency and how we run our clients' accounts, we're monitoring everything on a daily basis. And what this is an example of one campaign, one account where we've got a whole bunch of campaigns, and you can see our budget allocation is one thing, and the actual cost, the money spent on that day is different. So what that would look like in a rounded number is if you set your budget at $100 a day, you would see a higher than 100% usage. So that could be $110, $120, even up to $150. And you can see how widespread that overexpenditure is across quite a big number of ads. Quite significant because you can see it's pretty much across the board. There's only a couple of ads that aren't spending up to 100%. And I think what's important is just managing this. So let's quickly go into some do's and don'ts on what you should do to manage this cold spot. As you can see, we've got the two cold spots, the 31st of October and the 30th. And you can see our skier going down the slope. He's ready to pick up some speed. And that's that overspend ready to happen. The risks we have here in terms of a cold spot is extending a recovery period and actually ruining your entire account's stability. Now, two do's really important for all advertisers. Keep your eye on your spend. Monitor that overspend. It's a good indicator of what's actually happening. And communicate with your team, because this is inevitably going to happen, and it's good because otherwise everyone goes into panic stations. If you're an internal team, it's your team. If you've got clients, it's also a really good idea to communicate these up and coming chops. Things that you shouldn't do is make drastic budget changes in this transition period and rescale old performers too quickly. You need to let things settle first. If you're using cost controls, you shouldn't be changing bids. You're creating more instability and resetting learning. Let's go and have a look at
Before we move on, I just want to talk about this bullet point right here. Don't rescale old performers too quickly. So the mistake that we've made and why we put this in here is when we come out of hotspots, I have directed Ross more than one time, hey, in that last hotspot, this ad dropped off. Let's go restart it and start at the same budget we had it at. So let's say it was like $2,000 a day. That creates massive instability, which is what Ross was talking about. What you need to do is you can go back and relaunch old ads, but you have to start them at your initial testing budget and then work their way up. Otherwise, you're just going to pour fuel on the fire of bad performance. I've made that mistake so many times that Ross has helped me realize we should not do that any longer. So just one really important one to call out.
Perfect. Let's take a look at hotspots and what those look like. As we go into a hotspot, costs go up. So you're generally going to feel those cost per lead going up. And what you're going to feel generally is underspend. If you've got cost controls in place, bid caps, target ROAS, those kinds of things, you might even see some ads stop spending entirely. Let's look at a real world example of what that looks like. Again, looking through an account that we're running, you can see that there is an underutilization of budget. So let's take our $100 a day example. If we set $100, we would see lower than that and significantly lower. You know, you're seeing 23, 24%. There's some significant underspend here because costs have gone up and all of a sudden there's pressure. There's maybe less impressions available or our ads aren't performing as well because of the cost increase in that environment. Let's go and take a look at some do's and don'ts here for a hotspot. You can see our 2 hotspots for this month, the 9th of October and the 24th of October, the big one. Here we've got 2 risks, wasting budget and breaking stability. And all the time, what we're trying to do is manage our account for consistent delivery to maintain that stability. 2 big do's, same as what we have with our cold spot, monitor that spend. There's going to be underspend. Communicate with your teams if you're internal, communicate with your clients if you are managing a client, an account for a client. Things you shouldn't do is make drastic budget changes. You can ramp those budgets as much as you want. It's going to make very little happen because these costs are going up. You're going to have to weather the storm, try and stabilize your account and see, ride the wave. If you've got cost controls in place, bid caps, target caps, all of those things, don't be raising your bids. In these transition periods, you're going to break all your learning, 1. And 2, now you're asking the algorithm to go and find different people. And the other thing is, don't forget that only the strong ads will continue delivering in these high cost periods.
And from a managerial perspective, this last one's really important for me to factor in. When we're heading in these higher cost periods, we run our demand gen campaigns on target CPAs. I have to remind our clients, we're going to be experiencing higher pressure with all of our campaigns, but these target CPA campaigns, we're probably going to lose a few of them. And so our ability to spend when it comes down to volume becomes a problem. So it's really important that you're factoring this in that, hey, during this last week of November, we might lose half of our campaigns, so our ability to spend will be diminished in addition to higher costs. Just really important when you're talking about volume with either your internal team or your clients. This is really important one to know.
John, let's take a look. So what we do here is we take our annual calendar and we look at these macro seasonal trends. What's really important is to look, these are things that affect all advertisers, not just lead advertisers. These are big significant events, and we got a few happening in November. Let's have a quick look at them. Essentially, the first one to have a look at is the elections, which is something that potentially could significantly affect you depending on where you are and what happens in that state. The other one is our normal end of month, indicator where we're expecting higher costs, particularly now in November where we're in Q4 and this is Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And then we've got our 2 favorite ones, Black Friday and Cyber Monday. And this is where we're expecting the most volatility. And hopefully you've done your homework, you've done all your prep. Maybe you're sitting this one out. But yeah, these are some big events that are certainly going to affect you and your delivery, because this is the peak time where every advertiser is pushing budget into auction.
And so the final piece to add from my perspective is everyone's familiar with once you hit Black Friday, Thanksgiving, what's going to happen, right? We all know that's a bad cost time, but I don't think a lot of people understand what the beginning half of the month looks like. And so it's really important that you understand these dynamics of overspend, underspend, kind of steady state there for a little while. It's not going to be that bad this year. And then boom, it hits. This is just really important that you're planning ahead, communicating, and not doing the right things and not doing the wrong things inside of these periods. So Ross, thanks so much for walking us through that. All right, projection models. So once again, my job is to go to our clients and say, based off what we're seeing, here's what's going to happen to your P&L. So my goal with projections is to be able to see the CPM impact on our results. What does the cost environment mean for our overall P&L? Considering 2 variables every month, the number of selling days, and I have that highlighted because November has 1 fewer selling days than October. And then conversion rate changes. If you're seeing a big change in your conversion rate historically, seasonally, it's important to factor that in when you're doing your projections. The result is this should be telling you from an evergreen production perspective, what can we expect our proven base of campaigns to produce? And then we compare that to our goals and what we did last month, and it will help us determine our focuses. So we're either going to see a delta, a surplus, or steady state, and that will determine the actions that we take and how risky those actions are. So quickly, what do higher CPMs mean? Well, I said it was going to be a worst case 19% increase in cost per lead. It's really a 19% decrease in impressions. So if we spend $100,000 in October, we're going to reach 19% fewer people with the same amount of spend in November. And the reason this is important, I know performance advertisers do not care about CPMs, but the reason you should, most people only think about their funnels starting with their landing page and working their way through. It's not actually how this works. Your funnel starts with the number of impressions. So when your impressions shrink by 19%, Your CTRs will probably stay about the same. Your page load rate, your opt-in rate, and your purchase rate will likely stay the same unless you have some big seasonal conversion rate change, which means for the same amount of spend, you're going to have worse ROI because you're going to have fewer purchases. So that's just really important to understand that concept of this is why CPMs matter. What I do every month is I go through and I build out a spreadsheet that says, okay, October, if we spent $100,000 and these were our metrics, what's going to happen depending on what we focus on? And I build 3 models. The first one is if we maintain spend. Well, if we spend the exact same amount, our cost per lead is going to go up 19%, which means that we now have fewer leads, which means fewer revenue, less revenue, and worse ROAS. If our client says, hey, we can't afford to do fewer leads, well, now I say, okay, this is what I call peeing into the wind. So we're going to have to push higher into a higher cost environment to keep that volume up. So last month we spent $100,000 to do 10,000 leads. This month we're going to have to spend $141,000 to produce the same amount of leads, the same revenue, which means our ROAS is going to tank. And then, hey, if they say we cannot afford more than $10 a lead, cool, we're going to have to pull back. But since we're pulling back in a higher cost environment, this is a best case scenario. We would only be able to spend a maximum of $71,000 at that $10 cost per lead. So our ROAS would stay the same, but our revenue drops by $75,000. And so this is when we talk about what are you focusing on determines what your projections are going to look like. These are a few of the scenarios. If you have any questions on this, let me know down below, but I'm going to keep rolling. So the conclusions from this when I put this together is, okay, costs are up, results are down, which means we need to focus on plays this month that can help make up the delta so that we can keep our revenue and our profit targets in line with where they were last month to get to where we want to go. And so that's where we come to the cost environment playbook. Every month I try and give 3 plays that you can take in a high cost environment. We want to take low risk actions. We don't want to be testing a bunch of stuff that has no chance, or we don't believe it has a high chance of success. So I give you 3 plays. The highest lift is the most amount of work. Medium lift is medium, and the low lift is the easiest stuff that you can do. So I'm going to walk you through seasonal promos, non-paid efforts, and deploying proven angle iterations, which are 3 things that have worked for us in the past. The best way I found to do this is to give you an example. So I just went on my Facebook feed and I kind of scroll through to find a lead advertiser. And I found this guy's name's Troy Erickson, and he has a company called emaildeliverability.com. When I was scrolling through, I was like, I like this. This is a problem I know a lot of people have. So Gmail has now made it so the vast majority of marketing emails end up in the promotions tab. When they end up in the promotions tab, they don't get opened. And so what this guy's software does is get a higher percentage of your emails into someone's inbox, which means you have more opens, more click-throughs, and more sales. That's essentially what he's trying to do, and it's going to book a call to make this their funnel work. So one thing I would consider doing is if I was this guy is doing a seasonal promo, so utilizing something that's seasonally relevant to improve your conversion rates during higher cost times. If you can improve conversion rate, it's going to bring your cost per lead down, which will help offset those higher costs. So in this particular scenario, something I would consider putting together is for people who sign up in the month of November, we'll give you free access to our GPTs that contain the best performing email templates from 2024. All you have to do is answer a few questions. It'll spit out your entire content calendar from the month of November to maximize revenue. So the software is promising more emails hit the inbox. And then this offer is providing, proven templates that can produce better open rates, click rates, and sales to help you make more, make up volume. This is something that you could do really simply and clearly that would make a difference. So that's one thing that we could do there. And that's going to obviously be highest lift. You have to go through and put together the promo, the package, the GPTs, what have you, but it's something that could be done. The middle lift is your non-paid effort. So when I was a VP of marketing at a big supplement company, this was before I even had projections to understand how paid was going to change. All I was given, the CEO gave me a target for sales. I had to look at what we did last month and determine the delta. So, okay, we need to make up $50,000 of revenue. Then what I do is I go look at our campaigns on email, on SMS, on social, and you can do it for any other channels that you leverage, and determine the average revenue for each campaign. So I can take that $50,000 delta and I can break it down to I need to do X number of campaigns. And then I have to determine the content, because if you just keep doing the same thing, you'll see diminishing returns. So it's how do you leverage our top performing ad angles, the seasonal promo we put together, whatever, to be able to drive more revenue through these other channels to make up that delta. So, an example migration on this email deliverability.com site, I saw they have a case study of before and after. This particular, before the software, only 9% of sends were opened, where after 29% were opened. So it's essentially 3xing the number of opens. And so, how much more revenue could you do in November if you tripled the number of emails that hit the inbox, right? Obviously, a big opportunity. So, you could post something like that on social, and that's going to generate interest because people want more, open emails. You could send an email to people that have been on your list but have not followed through. What would 3xing the inbox mean for you in November? And I would really make sure anytime I'm doing something with email, the first thing I would say is you opened this email because it's in your inbox. But with all the Gmail updates, a lot of fewer emails are hitting the inbox. And so this is going to be costing you revenue. Our software solves this problem. And right now, here's our offer. And then with SMS, I would do something like, remember the good old days when emails used to hit the inbox? Well, we figured out how to make that happen again. Our average customer sees a 300% increase in the number of emails hitting Gmail inboxes. Respond more if you want to see what we could do for you. And the reason I do this, I do not put links in SMS ever because people think it's spam. So if they respond to you and they want more, then you can send a link to push people forward. And that's a really effective way to make SMS work. So those are 3 things that you could do in your non-paid efforts to go leverage something that you already have across the board to get some more sales. And you can do this with ad angles, with case studies, with whatever you've got. Just going and figuring out, I need more campaigns. How do we fill this with content that we've already proven that works? The final thing you can do is deploy proven ad angle iterations. Ross and I know that when it comes to media buying, ad platforms will always prioritize new content. What we want to do is give them that new content, but maximize our chances of success, which is why we develop angle iterations from stuff that's already proven. So we're giving them the new content, but we're maximizing our chances of that actually performing. And so the way we do this, I laid out here an N8N workflow that we built. N8N is an automation and AI platform, allows you to leverage agents and things like that. So I've set up a workflow that I click to execute whenever we need new iterations. We execute a SQL query, which tells us the angle numbers. It's the download links from Drive. It's all performance metrics. It downloads the file. It has ChatGPT transcribe those the videos. Those get sent to an agent, which has a specific prompt to iterate new versions. Once those are done, it will send that off to 11 Labs with a voice, and we'll get back finalized voiceovers that we just send to our video editors. This is really important. It's taken creative strategy out of this loop. They don't have to spend any time on iterations, and we can just get a lot more videos produced and stockpiled so that when it gets to a higher cost time, Ross is able to go through and deploy these. And to show you what this looks like, so this is basically a 2-month data poll, $3.2 million in spend for one of our biggest clients. We can see the breakdown across all of these angles. And what you'll see here is when we look at this, our top performers are producing fewer than 14% of our overall sales. So it's really well diversified across the portfolio. We prove out angles with videos because that's our core competency. And then we do this N8N process to iterate. And then we also migrate them to images and advertorials, which adds 10 to 15% more spend to our overall portfolio. So Ross, can you just explain from your seat what this has done for you now that you have this creative stockpile for these higher cost times?
Certainly, if you're in the media buying space, and you're in the seat, there's pressure. We've got to deliver volume, consistency, cost. And during these times where there's higher costs, essentially, if you've got something that is built off of a proven concept and it's stockpiled, ready to go, these are easy wins. I can grab them off a stockpile, chuck them in, get them running, and there's a real high chance that they're going to work. And take into consideration also, there's this big trend at the moment, no matter what social platform you're on, there's a lot of AI rubbish out there. It's just easy stuff that's being produced on Sora and being churned out. These versions that John's created through this iterative process, this is not AI slop. This is just a remix of a redone, proven concept. So it's been redone. We're creating a brand new piece of video content from a proven angle. So we're not just recoloring this, it's been remade, and then we're putting this back in. And as you can see, this is a really diversified portfolio. So we've got a lot of winning angles to pick from and work from, but our success rate has been really high with these iterations. We've had some of these AI iterative angles we've got one right now sitting on almost $3,000 a day as a single ad unit. So it's been really successful for us. And sitting in the media buying seat, this has been really helpful because I'm not having to go and test brand new stuff. I'm working with stuff that I know really, really works.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross. So, once again, you're going to be experiencing higher cost environments in the month of November. You need to take low risk actions. These are 3 things that you can leverage right now to go in and improve your performance and make up the delta as you head into these higher cost times. So, I hope these things serve you well in the month of November, and we will see you again to help you prepare for December. Talk soon. Thanks for watching this month's paid traffic forecast. Just by watching it, you and your team now know what to expect from your overall performance and the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to over the next 30 days. If you want to be this prepared every month, there's 2 things you can do. First, you can subscribe or follow our social channels so this information shows up in your feed at the beginning of every month. Second, if you want the information early, you can subscribe to our free list where you'll get the information delivered to your inbox a day ahead of time. If there's something you think we could do to improve our monthly update, just drop us a comment below and let us know what you think that is. And finally, if you're a business owner looking for someone who can help you develop an advertising ecosystem that produces more sustainable, predictable scale, make sure to head over to decyphered.com/start. On that page, you'll understand how our process works and the steps you can take to see if we might be a good fit to help you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.